Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here in the Overflow Room to talk about the ideal list of Dvořák choral works, one of the most neglected portions of his oeuvre. I guess that's the word, right? His output, except for perhaps for the operas. I mean, maybe even more than that. It's really kind of astonishing because Dvořák, as I have pointed out, was the most versatile genius of the entire Romantic period. That's the title of my book on Dvořák, which I encourage you all to run out and read if you can, because I think it's really cool. There's a lot of really cool music in there that people don't often talk about, like the choral works, for example. So, how do we discuss them? What is the best way to approach them? And what is the ideal list? Well, like all of these ideal lists, this is not necessarily my favorite for each version, but it is a list in which there are no weak links. Now, some of these pieces we don't have a lot of choice about. We really don't. But others have been really rather well served on disc. And it's kind of astonishing that they don't get talked about more and they don't get the respect they deserve. Well, it's not astonishing. I mean, that's the music biz, isn't it? So let's just get started. There are four major Latin liturgical choral works. These are the Stabat Mater, the Requiem, the Mass in D, and the Te Deum. And then there are some ancillary shorter pieces, but those are the biggies. And then there are three, which makes lucky seven. You notice that? Three important sort of patriotic, nationalistic type works. And those are cantatas, really. I mean, they just happen to be based on Czech folk stories and other things. Those are the Oratorio St. Ludmila. Bet you haven't heard of that in a while, huh? The Specter's Bride. And finally, a short piece about 15 to 18 minutes long, a chorus called The Heirs of the White Mountain, which is quite beautiful. And, it would be a wonderful choral opening piece instead of like an overture if you're going to do a big choral work. The Dvořák choral pieces are really great for that. The Te Deum's good for that too. So we're going to take them in clumps and let's go through them and see what we come up with. First of all, if you really want to make your life easy, and I can recommend this very, very simply, just get this box. This is the Supraphon set of sacred works and cantatas. It contains all of the music just mentioned, including like the biblical songs in both the orchestral and the piano versions, and you also get his short choral works. It's really a wonderful deal. An absolutely terrific deal. The performances are first rate, and on the last CD, I think how many CDs are in here? There are like 8. Yeah, it's 8 CDs. It all fits on 8 CDs, which isn't bad. You get a PDF with all of the texts and translations, which is extremely handy. The performances are marvelous. Most importantly, the choral singing is just wow, yummy, yummy, yummy. So this is a great way to get started, and then you can supplement where you think you need to supplement. The performances are marvelous. I mean, you've got, let's see what's in here, shall we? Some of the selections are a little unusual, actually. It may not be what you think. For the Stabat Mater, you get Bělohlavek, which is a lovely performance. It really is. And for the Te Deum, we have, which Te Deum do we have here? I mean, of course, they don't tell you under the Te Deum. They clump all the performers over here, so we have to go through it. The Te Deum, the Mass in D, and the orchestral versions of the biblical songs are with Smetáček. Fabulous performances. In fact, that disc may pop up again momentarily. And the Requiem is actually, it's interesting, it's Savalish. The Savalish recording with Benachkova and Fassbender, really very, very fine. It's not the Anchoral, which is what I might have expected in this set. For the Heirs of the White Mountain, we have Košler. For Psalm 149, which is one of his short choral works, you've got Neumann. And let's see, for St. Ludmila, not that there's a lot of choice, like I said, we have Smetáček again. For the Specter's Bride, we have Bělohlavek. That was his the more recent digital recording. There are a couple of them. In fact, they're right over there, all of the Specter's Brides and other things. And then we've got, let's see, for the biblical songs, this is a famous one, very, very famous, Drahomira Drobkova and Richard Novak with Ivan Moravec's piano and Vera Sukopova. It's just, it's wonderful. Just wonderful. That's the whole thing. That's all 8 CDs. And you've got a great set of Dvořák choral works. And you can make it all done. But I like to take these pigs apart bit by bit. Let's whiz this over there. There's a bed over there. It's not what you think it is. Unless I'm dealing with the Boulez complete works, in which case there was, a pit full of alligators at the other end there. But I let them go. All right, so let's start with the Latin stuff. Here we go. Stabat Mater. My choice for the Stabat Mater is Robert Shaw on Telarc. This was his last Telarc recording, and it was one of the ones that he was most proud of. He waited a long time to do this. It's a tough work to do. It's a fascinating work to do. The Stabat Mater is the most popular of all the Dvořák Latin choral works, which is interesting because it's a very sad text. He wrote it after the death of his children. Several of them, died rather suddenly for different reasons, and he was stricken with grief, and he poured it into this work. It's extremely affecting and beautiful. It's also the largest and most expansive setting of the text anybody ever conceived. Anybody ever. There isn't anything comparable to it. The first movement alone, the opening chorus, is about 18, 19 minutes in a single huge movement. It's probably the longest single movement that Dvořák ever wrote. It's really extraordinary. And it's a wonderful comparison piece to the other extraordinary setting of the text, which is Haydn's, which is the second longest setting of the Stabat Mater that anybody ever wrote. Really, both of which were written out of deep personal commitment, both to religious faith and to, the experience of possible or actual tragedy. In Haydn, it was recovery from illness. In Dvořák, as I said, it was the death of his children. It's an amazing piece. This is a great performance. The thing about Stabat Mater recordings is that they really depend on having wonderful soloists. And Shaw was always really careful about the soloists he used. He didn't care if they were big names or not. He cared that they could sing. And that's important. The soloists here are Christine Goerke and Marietta Simpson, Stanford Olson, and Nathan Berg. And they're absolutely marvelous. The entire work, by the way, it's on 2 CDs here, is 1 hour and 25 minutes long in this performance. Nowadays, you could probably get it on a single CD because they're doing that. They're squeezing between 80 and 90 minutes on a single CD. But it's glorious. And of course, the Atlanta Symphony Chorus under Shaw was one of the great choruses in the universe. And the sound is fabulous, just amazing. So this is an unbeatable Stabat Mater. I mean, there are many others too. It's been very well served. And at some point, I promised you all, like years ago, I was going to do a talk on the Stabat Mater, and I will, because I have like a dozen of them, and at some point I will definitely deal with that. So that goes over into the pile, onto the bed. Next, the Requiem. Now, the Requiem also has received quite a few recordings, but there are basically 3 major ones. They are Kertész on Decca, and Choral on Supraphon, and the new Antony Witt on Naxos. Those are the 3 really great recordings of the Dvořák Requiem. There are some others, and some of them are very good. They have their pluses and minuses. But I chose Kertész on Decca. And this was like such a surprise in the Dvořák discography, because as you know, Kertész did wonderful recordings of the symphonies, which are in this box, and the tone poems, which are in this box, and overtures and other goodies, which are in this box, and he did the Requiem. And I remember when I first saw it, thinking to myself, what the heck, Dvořák wrote a Requiem. Dvořák's Requiem, as I've said many times, is one of the all-time great settings of the text. I mean, it's right up there with the Verdi and the Berlioz and the other big 19th century romantic Requiem settings. It is, I think, kind of unique amongst them in that its ending is absolutely bone-chilling. It is not a consoling piece at all. It has amazing eruptive climaxes, fabulous choral expostulations, wonderful arias, and at the end, it really sounds surprisingly bleak. Shocked me. Because, Dvořák was such a happy guy. Everything he wrote was kind of cheerful. And you expected that he would really go the normal way, the expected way of doing something kind of consoling and sweet and nice, but it ain't. It isn't at all. It's its own thing. And this is a marvelous performance with the LSO and a really good recording and throbbing organ pedals. And he does include the optional big peal of bells at the repetition of the Dies Irae chorus, which you really should have. Oh, it's so much fun. And it really, really adds something, just this cosmic quality to the whole thing. It's so apocalyptic. It's just great. Absolutely great. So, Kertész for the Requiem. There we go. Now, the Mass in D. The Mass in D exists in two versions, and I have both of them here. One is for organ and choir, and the other is orchestrated, where you can do it as a concert work. It is a perfect first half piece and a beautiful, beautiful Mass setting. I'll never, never forgive the Penguin Guide for referring to it contemptuously as Dvořák's vanilla-flavored Mass, as if there's something wrong with it because it isn't, an existential Missa Solemnis-like challenge between, faith and unbelief, or man and God, or the B minor Mass, some big choral cantata-like extravaganza that lasts an hour and a half. Dvořák's Mass was written for actual church use. It lasts as long as it needs to last to actually not have people pass out from exhaustion or run away screaming because it won't end. Each movement is beautifully shaped, and it's the work of simple faith. I mean, that's what it is. There's no questioning about it. There's no existential angst. None. It's a beautiful, heartfelt, warm, humane setting of a believer. It's a testament to his faith. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love it. I think it's marvelous. And like I said, 40 minutes is as long as a symphony. It's beautifully done. And whichever version you listen to, the organ version obviously was made so that it can be played in a church with an organ without an orchestra. The orchestral version is better as a concert work. This recording was the one that's in the box over there. It was available separately. I don't know if it still is. This also contains, in addition to the Mass, the orchestrated version of the 5 biblical songs. There are 10, and Dvořák orchestrated 5. And then the other people orchestrated the rest, by the way. And the Te Deum is also on this disc. It's a marvelous performance of that, too. So it's a terrific disc if you want to get some, fill in your Dvořák choral music stuff. It's lovely. And I just think the Mass is an absolute masterpiece for what it is. Nobody spits on the Fore Requiem because it's not too requiem-y. It's not death-obsessed. It's not, big and long and overwhelming and catastrophic or anything like that. They don't. They say, oh, it's lovely. It's Fore. Why don't we give Dvořák the same credit? For heaven's sake, he was one of the great tunesmiths in the history of music. And it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But it just goes to show that Dvořák often can't get a break. It's just not fair. Now, this version is the organ version, and it comes with some other of his short sacred works. His Ave Maria for alto and organ, and his Hymnus ad laudes in festo sanctissime Trinitatis for alto and organ, and the Ave Maris Stella for baritone and organ, and O Sanctissima for alto, baritone, and organ. Those are all in here. The performance is by, who's the conductor here? Lubomir Mátl with the Prague Philharmonic Choir, which is a fabulous group. And you've got Josef, oh my goodness, he was doing so well. It's Kshitsa. Kshitsa, see that? There he is. That guy on the bottom, Kshitsa. Kshitsa, that's it. Organist. It's beautiful either way. So this is a nice way to get it, and it's a more recent recording too. It's a digital recording from, is there a date here? Date, let me see the date. No, why would they have a date? 1992. Okay, beautiful. So that's another way to get that. Now, if you just want the Te Deum, because you've got everything else, I have to throw in another one because I love the Te Deum. The Te Deum is one of Dvořák's American works. It's festive beyond belief. It sounds like the opening of the Three-Cornered Hat. It begins with a timpani solo in triplets, but two notes. Bum, 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 da, 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 da. You know, you expect it to go da, 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 da. The castanets coming and going, hey, 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 you know. No, it doesn't do that. The full orchestra comes in and the choir enters with the Te Deum. It is a wholly original, fabulous 4 movements in one setting that doesn't sound like Bruckner's or Verdi's or any of the other great Te Deum settings of the 19th century, the Berlioz, of course, but it is one of them. Beyond a doubt, it's about 20 minutes long, and this is the Neumann recording that's coupled to his excellent digital New World Symphony. It's a great coupling. I love this disc. I just play the whole thing through. The Te Deum is, sounds sort of fabulous after, the fadeaway ending of the New World. Or you can play them in reverse order, but it's just great. So that's terrific. And then, I think, is that it? No, what am I talking about? Of course not. Let's get rid of these. Over they go. Then we have to talk about the sort of quasi-secular patriotic works. Now, the first of those, the Heirs of the White Mountain, I just choose the version that's in the box because it's not easy to find. It comes coupled with other things. It's only 20 minutes long. It has to be coupled with other things. Obviously, there are some other versions. There's a good Smetáček version that was on Praga, coupled with the Sixth Symphony. It's right over there. And, there are a few others. So you can find it as an attachment to other discs of Dvořák's choral works. And I do recommend you listen to it. It's a wonderful piece. Dvořák's patriotic music was never bombastic and never cheap and never trashy. It was always just wonderfully sincere and affecting. And when it was grandiose, it was innocently grandiose. There was nothing self-conscious about it. So it really works. And it's a beautiful piece. But let's talk about the 2 biggies, shall we? The first is The Specter's Bride. Oh, this is so much fun. This is a dramatic cantata. It lasts about, let's see, how long is this performance? 76 minutes. It's a Mahler symphony in length. And it's the story. The story is Raff's Leonora, that story. It's the ghost bride, as it is in German, die Geisterbraut. It's the girl who's waiting for her boyfriend to come to marry her, and he shows up and he's dead. And he's a ghost, and he puts her on a horse and goes galloping across the countryside to their bridal chamber, which turns out to be the death house in the cemetery. And he lays her out on a slab, and he's all the ghosty, spirity things pop up, and they're about to come and claim their sacrifice when she prays most heartfeltly to the Virgin Mary, and the sun comes up and the spirits disperse and she is saved. Yes, and she learns her lesson. Now, of course, the ending of the story goes different ways depending on the story, but that's how it goes in this particular tale, the Czech version of the story. And this is fun. This recording is Zdeněk Macal with the New Jersey Symphony and the Westminster Choir on Delos. Now, they did a very, very, very fine series of Dvořák choral works. I mean, they're as good as the Czech ones. They're very good. And this is excellent. It's very well recorded. I still think that The Specter's Bride has not yet received the most sort of gut-punching, lurid, exciting recording that it deserves. I mean, I have the score. You look at the score and I see a wider range of dynamics and just, sort of more scarifying stuff. There's wonderful writing for glockenspiel and tam-tam. There's more stuff in there, I think, than we hear in any of these performances. But this is definitely one of the best ones. It has a certain edge that the work needs, number one, and the recording is really excellent, which helps a lot. Not only is that interesting, but, the spooky ghost arrival part features the same music that Dvořák later put in his tone poem, The Water Goblin. the moment when the water goblins, the storm gets stirring up, and you hear the tam-tam in the background, and the tremolo and the double basses and all of that stuff. That came from here, and he reused it. It was so effective as like ghost music or evil spirits music that it pops up again. That's just one of those little details that you may want to know. If you know the tone poems, you'll recognize that moment when you hear it. And then there follows this fabulous song for baritone and choir. Oh, it's so much fun. Do 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 boo 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 do 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 yeah da 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 da. Oh, it's just great, absolutely great. So that's that one. That's the Specter's Bride. And last but not least, we have to talk about Saint Ludmila. This is a marvelous recording, let's just say straight off, with Gerd Albrecht and the Prague Chamber Orchestra and the radio choir of WDR Cologne and the Cologne Radio Symphony Orchestra, WDR, those people, on Orfeo. Now, Albrecht also did the Specter's Bride, and a lot of very good Dvořák operas and things. He did a lot of unusual Dvořák very, very well. He was wonderful to Dvořák, and so has Orfeo been in recording some of this lesser-known stuff. This is, I think, absolutely complete. It lasts, oh my goodness, longer than you'll probably want it to. No, it lasts 2 hours and 24 minutes. This is a big 3-part oratorio. It has actually been staged, although it's not like, Handel stagings of oratorios. It's not exactly designed for that. The story is the thrilling, excitement-packed tale of the conversion of Bohemia and Moravia to Christianity through the love of Saint Ludmila and her hubby, who is, Prince Dingbat or something. I don't know what his name is. Doesn't make any difference. And the trials and tribulations attendant upon said conversion. This is not a topic that particularly fascinates me, I have to confess. But the music is vintage Dvořák. It's marvelous. It's beautiful. Like his other, the Specter's Bride and the Requiem and all that stuff. He wrote it for the Stabat Mater. He wrote them for England, where they were first performed and became successful there. Hugely successful there. And since then, they have been trashed, especially St. Ludmila, which Dvořák even knew was very long. He wanted it to be a full evening's work, and then he wound up having to cut it down, and it was cut and rearranged and chopped up and sliced and diced, and you know how that goes. But it really is very, very good music. In whatever version you get it. And the thing that kills me about this stuff is that the reason this is neglected, there are a few reasons these pieces, especially the secular-ish, well, this is, sacred oratorio, but it's not a Latin text, not a liturgical work. The reason that these are neglected is several-fold, and none of them are musical. They so seldom are. First is that the language is Czech. Well, that's always a problem, right? Even if there's an English translation that you could use as well, which undoubtedly is what happened in the UK when they first did these things. But the Czech language was a drawback. It isn't anymore because, first of all, there are a lot of wonderful Czech artists who are international artists. And second of all, people just expect nowadays that choirs will learn things in the appropriate language. So, as they do here. So that's not the issue anymore, but it was. And then there is nothing that gets people, more, gets their disgust and distaste more than the sacred oratorio tradition of the 19th century, and especially in the UK. And because, the UK was so proud of their sacred oratorio and choral tradition until the 20th century, when they started getting symphonies and other things that other composers were doing, and they were competitive, and then they said, oratorios? What are oratorios? What were those? And they were particularly nasty and dismissive of oratorios written by foreigners, written by other people from other countries, those people, like Gounod's French oratorios or Dvořák's oratorios, because, naturally, they were vastly superior than the trash that English composers were writing in most of the 19th century, unless, of course, they were by Sullivan. And so, their natural xenophobia kicked in, and they never had a good word to say for all these people who wrote beautiful, beautiful music to be performed by their wonderful, large festival choirs. And that was that. The one country that really should have been the first to defend these works was one of the first to spurn them. Oh, it was so unfair. But here we have all of Dvořák's choral works. That's the story. You know, that's the way it shook out. And it wasn't fair and it wasn't right, but we don't care because we're going to make it right with this ideal list of all of the major Dvořák choral works. So get them, enjoy them, and keep on listening. Take care.